Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, thank you for showing up to this, from my point of view, very important debate on the current situation in Hungary. I'm very glad, I'm very happy that my friend Agnes Heller is here today. We know each other since a lot of years, and we had some very important political debates in Bremen, in Budapest. We had a meeting in New York, so we have been very close and talked about a lot of different issues. And in Bremen, in the city-state of Bremen, there is the Hannah Arendt Award for Political Thinking, and Agnes Heller was awarded this award for the freedom of political thinking. She was born in Budapest in 1929. She is of Jewish-Hungarian origin. She is a philosopher, and she left Hungary in 1977. She went to Australia, to the University of Melbourne, and she was a professor there from 1978 to 1983. And then she was a professor at the New School for Social Research in New York, following Hannah Arendt, the other important Jewish philosopher in New York. Agnes Heller was always against communist oppression and in favor of liberal, democratic thinking and in favor for open and democratic societies. We had the debate on the Hungarian media law, and this is a big danger from our point of view to the freedom of press and to the openness of society. I just come back from a hearing this morning in this house of the Media Intergroup, and we talked to some experts there, and it was very clear that we are not satisfied with the Commission's approach to the Hungarian media law, that we really are calling for a renewal of this law and taking into account important stakeholders and civil society in Hungary to go for a renewed and really democratic media law. And I think there was one sentence in the hearing this morning, and that I think is very crucial to the debates on press freedom all over Europe. We are not talking only about Hungary, we are talking about a lot of other countries. And there was a case law in the European Court, and they stated it's not only about balanced information in the media, the duty of media is as well to offend, to disturb, to shock, and that is part of the freedom of press, and that we have to make clear, otherwise we are lacking a real freedom. Agnes, and that I think is very important because she lives part of the year in Budapest. She is a member of the Academy of Science in Hungary, and other parts of the year she is in New York and going globally to give lectures and talking to students, and she is having open debates, and she will give us now her interpretation, what is currently going on in Hungary and what she thinks Orban is aiming at. So the floor is yours, Agnes. We are very glad to have you here.
Dear Helga, thank you very much for your invitation, and thank everyone who are my old friends. And also, I'm happy that some delegates of the Fidesz are also here, because I think I would like to have a real debate, as always. I'm not a political actor, I'm certainly not a politician, I'm not even a political scientist, and I'm a poor philosopher. So what I'm going to say, I say it as an intellectual. And I emphasize as a liberal intellectual. I must emphasize liberal intellectual because lately the word liberalism is identical in the Hungarian press, in the rightist press, with devilish, with fraudulent, with enemy, with non-national, with something very strange and something very alien. So it became rather a word of abuse. So I openly say that I am a liberal person, a liberal philosopher with whom criticism of all sorts is important, for whom you cannot really accept something as they tell you you should accept, but you have always look at the things which are offered to you and figure out whether it's right or wrong. And if you think something is wrong in it, then you have to tell it. You have to tell it openly. You have to tell it not just in your apartment to your friends, but before the public. And this is basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell what other people also say in their in salons and in the company of their friends. I will say this in public. First of all, the topic is about democracy. Nowadays, in the press and the television, you very frequently hear the word, the expression, the other democracies than Western democracy, particularly when the Middle East is discussed. In my view, there is only one kind of democracy, and it is what we call Western democracy, a kind of democracy where the majority decision is combined with the respect for the minority, where there is a division of powers. A division of power is taken very seriously also by those who are in majority. So on this ground, on the ground of this kind of conception of modern democracy, am I going to criticize certain acts of the present government in Hungary. First and foremost, I would like to tell you that the Hungarian government is not a conservative government. In the German press, in other press, I always refer to as a conservative government. It is certainly not conservative, because the Prime Minister of Hungary declared a revolution. He said that a revolution took place in the ballot box, and now the ballot box revolution has to be followed by the revolution from above. Take his word seriously. It is not a conservative, it's a revolutionary government, a revolution from the right, which you do not need to label it, because I don't like labeling. But it's certainly a revolution from the right, in which the tradition, 20 years of tradition of Hungarian democracy gets criminalized. That is a very strong tendency towards criminalization of everything which happened in the last 20 years in Hungary. I would not say good things happened only, terrible things happened all the same and all the time. I would not say defend everything that happened during these 20 years, far from defending it.
Not too fast.
Far?
Translation.
So, I repeat, I don't want to defend everything that happened in the last 20 years in Hungary. Far from this. But I would not allow to criminalize these 20 years, which means that the government starts on a kind of avenue where acts of the previous government are assessed as criminal acts, and if they are not punishable by law, they will find laws on the ground of which they will be punishable. So it is a kind of campaign against former governments. I do not mean criticism, because that's always right, but a kind of campaign against the former governments in plural, without any kind of limit. Everything can be said about this government, and they will believe it. At least they will show that they believe it. Now, this situation could develop in Hungary very legally, because according to Hungarian constitution, if a party wins 54% of the votes, then he gets 2/3 majority in the parliament, and if he gets 2/3 of majority in parliament, this party can do whatever it wants to do. Only self-restraint would be needed. And this is what is lacking in the Hungarian government. They are entitled to do what they want to do. They are entitled to execute their will absolutely, but I think some self-restraint would be advisable, because without this kind of self-restraint, they will endanger not just the country, but also themselves. I'm absolutely sure about this. Now, how did it happen that pluralism was, in a way, not outlawed, but almost constantly and successively eliminated? First was the position of the President of Hungary. We used to have 3 presidents in Hungary, 2 conservatives and 1 Free Democrat president. They were all autonomous human persons. They had an authority on their own. There was a division of powers because they were very frequently dissatisfied with the acts of the government, and they said so, and they used their institutional power to make the task of the government difficult. All the 3 presidents in Hungary did it. Now, Fidesz choose a kind of president which is basically a puppet, who is a puppet, who has no authority of his own, cannot even speak Hungarian, cannot even write Hungarian well, and it has no authority. His only position is to be the servant of the government. He can basically kept on strings. That's the first stage of eliminating the division of powers. The second stage was the introduction of the retroactive 98% taxation of, I think, funds I was not even retirement funds, but some kind of superannuation funds, retroactive legislation. Now the Constitutional Court declared it is unconstitutional. After it, the power and the authority of the Constitutional Court had been curtailed. That was the answer to the decision of the constitutional law. This government has changed the constitution 9 times already.
Coffee or tea, Agnes?
Coffee, please. Okay, this government has changed the constitution at least 9 times. I counted only 9 times changing, and the position, the problem is they want to concentrate and centralize all power in the hand of Fidesz and in the hand of the Prime Minister. That's very important, in the hand of the Prime Minister. Because I tell you in brackets, I am absolutely sure that not everyone among the Fidesz members of the parliament are very much in agreement with this kind of policy. I cannot really imagine that all of them would be in agreement with this policy. But this is the policy, and I cannot speak in the name of those who disagree with this policy, only those who agree with this policy, obviously. I could go to the next stage. The next stage was the nationalization of private pension funds. That is, the government has nationalized private funds, pension funds, and on the ground that this happened by the free choice of the people, that they joined the state pension funds by choosing something freely. I would tell you, Hungarians always choose everything freely. They even entered collective farms after 56 freely. You have to know the Hungarian attitude. Unfortunately, this attitude was created, I maintained, since the end of the First War by the policy of servility. The Hungarians have learned servility. They knew they should not move, they should not say no, they should obey, because otherwise there will be terrible consequences. And this is the moment I would like to turn to the media law. Now, first of all, I speak about the media law, that first of all I say this law was, in Hungary at least, in my mind, totally superficial. Because in Hungary, people anyhow obey a government, anyhow do what they are asked to do, that they wanted to do. They want to read the minds of people who are in power, because reading the minds, believe they will get higher position in the country, so basically they obey all the same. But it was not enough for the government. In fact, for the Kádár government, it was enough that people obeyed anyway because they were afraid of them, and they did not need any kind of censorship because self-censorship worked well in Hungary. But now the kind of censorship authority is introduced because this media law establishes an authority of which is a censorship authority. I repeat, it was superfluous. All the same, it was institutionalized. What is wrong about this? It's not the first or the second or the third paragraph is wrong. The whole is wrong. that the whole institution is wrong. How can you imagine that there is one single authority, and this authority ruled by one single person? All members of the authority are the members of the same party, of the governing party. The head of the authority is also the elected member of the governing party. How can you even believe that this kind of authority will use his proper judgment, objective judgment, if it comes to the application of the rules? Of course, the rules themselves can be formulated, can be institutionalized by one single person. One single woman has the right to introduce rules for the press, printed press included, and they have to obey. Otherwise, there will be very, very serious fines committed to them. I would say, of course, I will come to this. The press can be nasty. The press, not just the printed press also can be nasty. There can come, and it does come, to the infringement of human rights. It can come, and it does come frequently, to libel, to slander, and other kind of, I would say, civil crimes. This is why we have courts. We can always appeal to the courts. Now, if your name is slandered, if in case of libel, in case of attacks against your humanity, or against your group, or against your ethnicity or religion, in all these cases you can turn to the court. And this is what in a normal case you do. This is what I did. I come to this. I also turn to the court. You do not need a central authority from which you know that this decision will be only a decision of a party, and without any kind of exception. How do I know it? Because they always say that we do not know how it's going to work. Because obviously it is a possibility that they will apply these rules according to their merit and not according to their political involvement. But as far as I would say, the experience suggests, we have an experience, already 9 months experience, and after this experience we cannot really hope that this kind of an authority will be objective, will be mete out punishment on objective grounds, and so on and so forth. And even if they did, it would be totally superfluous. So, but this is not just superfluous, it's a danger. I would refer to a talk by our Prime Minister, who once said that this media law is a great law, it's a Hungaricum, it's a Hungarian specialty, and in this case, Hungary is ahead of all Europe. That whole Europe will learn that what we do with this law is the right thing to do, and they will imitate us. That will be the model of Europe. And this is the greatest danger of this law, that maybe some nations of Europe are going to imitate this law. Otherwise, only Hungarians will suffer, and we are a small country. But in the other case, if it will be imitated, I think many, many countries, many people would suffer under this. The issue is that the government, and especially the Prime Minister, has a very bad conception of power, a very bad conception of power. They really believe that the power increases if it's centralized, and basically only one person, there is only one person, one point, which carries all the kind of powers. Centralization of power, concentration of power. I think that's a total wrong conception of power. And I think that they are going to pay for it. Because it works perhaps in an absolute monarchy, but it does not work in a democracy. In a democracy, a government is powerful if it's based on consensus of different political groups, of different parties, of different opinions. Now, consensus is the broad basis, a broad power basis. And if you are based your power on consensus, then this is a real power which lasts, not a momentary power. What is the idea behind this, the elimination of all kind of checks and balances? There are other aspects as well. The Prosecutor General is now selected for 9 months. The monetary committees, 2 members are now elected by the parliament or speaker, so understand the governing party, so many other aspects of this kind of concentration of power. I think it's a bad policy, because a concentrated power is always a very small power. It looks big, but it is in fact small, because very few opinions agree with it. Less and less opinions agree with it. So it's a bad conception of power. What do they do now in order to create a greater support for this power? I already told you, criminalization. They criminalize the previous government. For example, there is now a suggestion before the parliament, according to which the increase of national debt should be considered as a crime, and one should punish it as a crime before the court. Of course, there are no, I repeat, there are no laws for this purpose, but you can create laws which can also function as in a case of retroactive legislation. The conception that everything which is now a trouble of the government stems from the previous governments, all the previous governments, and especially from the intelligentsia, which creates a bad reputation for the governing party abroad, that the media law displeases some powers in Europe just because some intellectuals created a havoc about this. I think it's simply ridiculous, because I think that members of the press understand what a law means, which tries to govern centrally the press. You do not need Hungarian intellectuals in order to say that this is wrong. Now, I come back to the problem that they criminalize first and foremost liberals, and together with the old government, and this has also a kind of reason. The reason is that the former government was a coalition government and was a liberal party in this coalition government. So those people who are considered liberal need to be criminalized in order to reach certain members of the Free Democrat Party, which is no more in the parliament. You have to reach through them. I don't want to speak about the cases against philosophers, but it is obvious from this case that through criminalizing 6 grants, which is basically ridiculous, and it's a fairy tale, they want to reach Bálint Magyar, the former Minister of Culture, through us. That is basically, we are here stepstone in order to criminalize someone else. Now, I want to come back to this problem, which I mentioned. That's a very bad conception of having power behind this. And a far better conception is to seek for support. One of the great problems here is what I call Kulturkampf, and not I call it only Kulturkampf, the replacement of the intellectual elite with other people. That is, the intellectuals leading members of the elite are simply thrown out from their jobs. One have the other, director of the opera, director of the ballet, director of the Meteorological Institute, cinema theater directors, directors of academic institutions, and so on and so forth. They are thrown out from their places. Now, you may believe that the conservative intellectuals are indeed interested in it. I think the opposite is the case. I saw from the reactions on the philosopher's case that the conservative intellectuals in Hungary do not support this policy. They will not be heard with liberal criticism, because liberals never criticize, this kind of liberals never criticize real performances or real success. Sometimes they do, but they do not hurt them. On the other hand, those positions which are now empty will not be filled by conservative intellectuals, because conservative intellectuals have their positions, and no one has occupied their positions. They are for the turncoats. I would like you to understand how many turncoats are in my country. The same persons who served János Kádár, the same persons are now making the case against the liberals. Not just the same types of person, but actually the same kind of person, the same persons. I don't want to, that is, so-called munkásőrök, that is no good English translation. People were serving in the volunteer civil army of the Hungarian Communist Party after '56. Police informers, yeah? These are now, they declare themselves as the main new right-wing elite. They are self-reclaimed right-wing elite, but they are exactly the same people. You can look at this. So basically not the conservative intellectuals, but these kind of persons are making the great attack against the so-called liberal intellectuals. Now, how could it happen? And I return to the same problems. We have a tradition of this kind. Hungary has a tradition of neglecting self-help, neglecting also autonomous action, but waiting everything from the government, waiting everything from one single person. From Franz Josef through Miklós Horthy and János Kádár till the present moment, Hungarians got used to it, that there is a father figure, must not be old, a father figure, and who will give offer them favors. That is, Hungarians do not think in terms of rights, but think in terms of favor. They can ask favors from the prime minister or from the president or someone, and they will grant them favors. I will give you now two examples, both about Orban. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, both about Orban. Two examples, I know I have 5 minutes, both about Orban. In the when the Orban government was in power, was a demonstration, and people took slogans with the following text: Victor, thank you for the bridge. Now, it happened not long time ago that when there was a plan to abolish for the pensioners free use of the public services, trains, trams, etc. in Hungary, then the television said, personally, President Orban, or Prime Minister Orban personally intervened. He did not allow that the pensioners should lose this privilege. So obviously playing on people's belief in the leader from whom they have to ask favors, and they are going to grant them favors. I know that my time is out, and I would like to answer your questions because this is the time for questioning. I know that I could not tell you everything what I was thinking about these matters. Maybe after your questions I'm going to say something more.
Thank you, Agnes. Several people asked for the floor, and you all will have the possibility to talk, but please let me start with one question myself. There was an attack that you and Michali Voidia and other professors should have misused European research funds. And it was covered in the press in a lot of European countries, and maybe you can give us some elaboration on that point.
At the beginning of January, 3 newspapers, right-wing newspapers, plus 3 right-wing television stations, plus 2 right-wing radio stations started to tell a story. They repeated this story, they just still repeat this story. Once upon a time, it was a real story because there was no factual basis of the story. There were roughly more than 100 grants, research grants in Hungary. They picked 6 research grants, closed research grants, because they were closed, given that they were 3 times already investigated, that was closed, investigation closed. They took up 3 grants, and they started to criminalize these 6 grants. 6 grants, they said, and they did, there was a beautiful expression, they said, the expression was that Heller and his band has researched away $500,000 foreign. Heller and her band, what is a band? Has researched, of course in Hungary there is no such a word, researched away, neither is it in English. It meant that you stole the money. Yeah, that was that, they are thieves. They are the thieves, Heller and her bands. Now, about Heller and her bands, the band was put together by people who were liberals. That was the only thing which connected these 6 grants, that the project leader was a liberal. 2 of them were, in fact, my friends. There were 2 I didn't even know. I had no idea who they were. And even the case in my friends, I had no idea about the grants. I didn't even know that they got a grant. So immediately I was a leader of a band, a gang. And they basically repeat this. I do not want to apologize. I tell you only that I haven't got 1 single penny. I just to tell you, but I haven't got 1 single penny, but was accused for stealing $500,000 foreign. That is a fairy tale. But if you repeat a fairy tale every day in all newspapers and all radio stations, finally people believe that it is true. I gave an interview to a newspaper, and they said, look, in the 16th century, they would tell that every midnight, I was participating in a black mass and was creating a potion which I wanted to put into the soup of the President of the Academy of Sciences to transform him to a liberal. And in every first Friday of every month, I slept in the bed of the chief Lucifer, the chief devil. So in the 16th century, an inquisitor of the 16th century would tell it, everyone would believe him. But the reality, that is the reality content of this statement is exactly the same as the reality content of that I and my gang have stolen $500,000 foreign. But if you tell it, the inquisitor will put it and will be a trial. But I don't know whether, I don't think there will be a trial. But anyway, it's now before the, I think, persecution, prosecutor general, yeah? The prosecutor general, I think that's the English equivalent. It is now before the prosecutor. We are under investigation now, for nothing.
Thank you. Now we start with the open debate, and the floor is yours, Madam Move.
Thank you very much, Professor Heller. You said that Hungarians have a tendency to follow their governments unconditionally. With all due respect, I don't think that was the world's experience with Hungarians in 1956. And let me ask you, if Hungarians follow power and their government unconditionally, then why did the liberal socialist coalition government had to shoot at Hungarians in 2006 on the 50th anniversary of the 1956 revolution? Why did they have to cause serious injury to hundreds of people? Why did they have to put hundreds of people into prison and torture them in prison? Why did they have to do it on and on and on between 2002 and 2010? Why every single anti-government demonstration had to be dissolved by the socialist and liberal government? Where were you, Professor Heller, during all those years? Where were your European liberal friends during all those years? Why did this group didn't get together during all those years when all anti-government protesters were in prison and they were tortured and they were beaten and they lost their eyes because they were shot at by the communist, socialist, liberal government? Don't you think if the
We got your point. Maybe you leave some time for the other colleagues as well, please.
May I ask you, why are you laughing? This is so wonderful that this meeting...
I was laughing because you said communist, socialist, liberal, and that sort of summed it all up for me.
This was a coalition of liberal SDS.
We got your point. We got your point. Can she answer?
I don't think so, because would you get my point, you would continuously talk about these issues ever since 2006.
I will tell you how continuously we talk about Hungary. I give you the answer after, but first is Agnes Heller. Okay?
Let me ask you straight away, would you devote a sitting to that issue as well? Because it would be high time to devote a sitting in the European Parliament to evaluate the situation of Hungary between 2002 and 2010. Please be fair and give others the possibility
to talk as well. Please. She will answer now. Mrs. Mauer, please.
Let her answer now. Way of chairing the sitting. Thank you.
You presented another fiction in the form of a question. No one was shot. Show me a fact. No one was shot. No one was tortured. Show me a fact about anyone being shot, anyone being tortured. My dear, I need a fact, because that's not even the Fidesz claims that anyone would have been shot. What they claim is not this. They claim something else, which is also very problematic, but never claim that people were shot, never claim that people were tortured. I'm sorry. That's your story, that's your fiction. I don't want to speak about 2006, because it would take us too far away, but I repeat that this is a fiction. No one was shot, no one was tortured, and even now, which I disagree with, they want only put null and void the kind of court decision which was only on the testimony of the police. That's the thing. I disagree with this too, but it's far away from what you now suggest.
I would like to take you, the European deputy, and then it's your.
Thank you very much. I'm Judge Flynn Ágnes. Szeretettel köszöntelek itt a parlamentben. I'll continue in English. What I think is not self-evident to those of you who don't know Hungary, and I'm afraid the Hungarian language serves as a terrible barrier, is that there's a very, very deep divide which is mapped onto party politics. It's an ontological divide. There are two narratives on practically any issue you care to mention. I have said in the past there are left-wing restaurants and right-wing restaurants in Budapest. The quality of the cooking is almost certainly equally good. So if you take it from this perspective, what you have heard is Agnes's narrative. It is perfectly legitimate, is fine in its own terms. It's just that there are other narratives which she will necessarily not mention. I will, because I come from the other side of the divide. Now, first of all, the criminalization to which, Agnes, you referred several times. It's not that there is a single authority in Hungary which says, we press the button and there will be criminalization. There are institutions in Hungary, there are legal institutions which have their autonomy. They are not necessarily, as you seem to be implying, under the control of political power. So if you are talking about criminalization, it's to do with what the prosecutor decides. And if the prosecutor is launching investigations, we know there's a very considerable number of investigations which have been launched given the level of corruption under the previous government, don't be surprised. If anybody is found guilty, then they're found guilty. Otherwise, it seems to me, and this of course does refer to the so-called philosopher scandal, if there is no malfeasance of any kind, then you have nothing to fear. I think Hungary is actually a state of the rule of law. Let me go on to the next point you made, and maybe you'd like to withdraw the word servility. It is actually highly offensive, certainly to me, although I don't care, but there are a number of Hungarians sitting in this room. I don't know that they would really want to be called a nation of serfs who are capable only of servility. I don't think Hungarians are mindless robots. In any case, if Hungarians are mindless robots, then how come that you, Agnes, constitute an exception? How come that you are not servile? I don't think I'm servile either. The concentration of power and the way in which you suggested there is only hierarchy, only obedience, this does imply very clearly to me that Hungarians have no professionalism. They are totally under the control of whoever the political power happens to be. I don't think this is correct, and I think you would acknowledge yourself, or at least I hope, that this is incorrect, that Hungarians do have professionalism on both sides of the divide. There are perfectly competent lawyers, there are perfectly competent philosophers even on both sides of the divide. Finally, one thought for you. Now, you talked at length of the media law, and I don't want to go into this. In fact, I've spent a great deal of time talking about the media law. If you characterized various things as fairy tales, now, if the media, which appeared in the right-wing press, if the media do tell fairy tales, then don't you think it may be a good idea to have a media law to stop newspapers from telling fairy tales?
I have a question on these fairy tales in media law. I have a question to you and to all who defend the media law. It's a very simple one. And I gave it when I talked to Orban, the example of Watergate. With the Hungarian media law, the Washington Post couldn't continue because it was said by Nixon and that it is a fairy tale. It's a completely liar. All the Watergate study was a liar until at the end it was true and Nixon has to go. But at the beginning nobody believed it. So the problem of a media law who is structured under the control of a political party is that things like this, take the example of the German defense minister Gutenberg. At the beginning when it was said that he has copied his doctor, every media on the one side said it's a liar. It's a liar. Now he had to admit that 300 pages for 464 was copy-paste. And if you would have a media structure, they would forbid to continue to pretend that he did cheat. No, today he is away. He is not defense minister because he has cheated. If you have a political control on this, the media couldn't continue to say he is a cheater. This is my problem.
Now, let me answer. Okay, so you said something very important. There is a total division in Hungary. That is, there are two parts of the population which do not even want to understand each other. But if a party gets the two-thirds of majority, this party at least the opportunity to put an end to this division. Instead of using this opportunity, they use the two-thirds for the opposite purpose. Just the opposite purpose, to deepen the abyss, not to build a bridge upon the abyss, to deepen the abyss. About the concrete things you said, you cannot deny that instead electing a president who has authority on his own right a president had been selected, nominated by the prime minister, who is not an independent person. You cannot deny that in the case when something was considered anti-constitutional by the Constitutional Court, then the parliament, the government restricted the power of the Constitutional Court as an answer. You cannot deny that the chief prosecutor had been nominated for 9 years. You cannot deny that the censorship authority is based on this only from members of the one single party, and no other person participates in it. Even if this person with the best had the best intentions, it's impossible to make right decisions, because exactly because what you said, there are different narratives. You are right, there are different narratives, but if people make decisions who all belong to the same narrative, you cannot help that their decision will be one-sided and biased. That's why needed the division of powers, to have different narratives, who can consult with each other, discuss with each other. We do not need all a law to pass in 2 hours and 5 laws passing in one single day in the parliament. Democracy is a slow institution. We have to make compromises, we have to discuss, we have to negotiate. You cannot go from one moment to the other. If you do something from one moment to the other, it will not last long. And it falls back to the head of those who invented it. This is what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Now the floor is yours, yes.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I have in mind many things to say and question, but the time is very short, so let me turn to Hungarian, because I would be very exact, because the issues are very sensitive, which are before us. Én nagyon szomorúan hallgattam ezt az előadást, mert fiatal korunkban Ágnesnek és műveinek nagy tisztelőjeként. Yes, we have.
Okay, so German?
We have.
Yes, we have. 16.
16. Okay.
So there's complete translation from Hungarian to all other languages spoken in this group.
Okay. Szóval szomorúan hallgattam ezt az előadást, mert fiatalkorunkban Ágnes műveinek nagy tisztelőjeként agyon jegyzeteltem a könyveit, és nagyon tiszteltem azt a pengeéles logikát és objektivitást, amiről ő a világ dolgairól gondolkozott. Ehhez képest most hallottam egy előadást, amiben én a nagyon-nagyon szélsőséges elfogultságon kívül mást nem találtam, tények súlyos elferdítése, illetve más, az ő képében nem illeszkedő tények tudomásul nem vételét. Engedje meg, hogy ne tűnjek kicsinyesnek, de ahogy mondani szoktuk, az ördög a részletekben lakik, tehát először is látszólag kicsinyes módon nem titkolom, hogy bizonyítandó az elfogultságot, néhány apró kérdést tegyek fel. Ágnes komolyan gondolja azt, hogy amikor Orbán Viktor metaforikusan azt mondja, hogy a szavazófülkékben forradalom zajlott, ez egy metafora, lehet ezt úgy fordítani, hogy Magyarországon jobboldali kriminális forradalom vette kezdetét. Akik a történelmet ismerjük, gondoljunk a Hitlerájra, a nemzeti szocialista forradalomra, az valóban demokratikus, titkos választásokon, szavazófülkékben zajlott le, ugye ez komolytalan. Nagyon sértő volt az, ahogy Schmidt Pál köztársasági elnök úrról nyilatkozott. Nem. Egyetlen, oké. I don't understand Deutsch, but excuse me. Egyetlen kérdés, hogy ha őt zavarja Schmidt Pálnak a konzervatívokhoz közelállása, nem zavarta, hogy Göncz Árpád elnök úr a liberális párt országos tanácsának tagja és tisztségviselője volt? Nem kettős mérce ez? Tovább megyek, cenzúrahatóság működik Magyarországon. Magyarországon mindent meg lehet írni, azt, amit most Ágnes elmondott, de sokkal durvábban is, naponta minden magyar sajtóorgánumban mindenki azt ír, amit akar. Ezt hívják cenzúrának. Kérdezném, hogy Ágnestől, hogy miért nem emelte fel a...
we only have time until 4:30. Please restrict yourself to one question now.
Miért jelentette ki azt, hogy mindazok a dolgok, amikre utalni szoktunk, és amik a Gyurcsány kormány 8 évében zajlottak, a titkosszolgálatok felhasználása, politikai ellenfelek megfigyelésére, mérhetetlen korrupciós ügyek, és a vérengzések nem csak október 23-án, más eseteket is szívesen elmondok neki, befejezem. Egyetlen kérdésem, Ágnes, én ott voltam október 23-án a tömegbe. Idős hölgyek álltak körülöttem vérző fejjel. A legjobb barátom 4 kisgyereke súlyos sérüléseket szenvedett. Nem szélső jobboldal, ez egy békés tömeg volt.
Please, once again, I think we got your point. Please, it's a question of being fair to the colleagues. Please.
Amikor kriminalizálásról beszél, és arról, hogy Heller Ágnes és bandája, és ahogy néhány sajtóorgánumban ebbe még a rasszizmus kérdését is belekeverték. Ezt az egy mondatot engedjék meg, hogy befejezzem, és hogy félreérthető ne legyen, az én felmenőim többsége megjárta Auschwitzot. Nagy részük ott maradt, kisebb részük túlélte úgy, ahogy. Azért tettem hozzá, hogy ne magyarázzanak félre. Komolyan lehet ezt gondolni, hogy egy korrupciós ügy kivizsgálásába inkvizíció, rasszizmus és hasonló tényezők játszanak szerepet. Ágnes, ezt ön komolyan gondolja?
Before you answer, Agnes, ich würde gerne eine Sache anmerken, und zwar, bevor das jetzt sich immer und immer wieder wiederholt. Hier im Europäischen Parlament ist auch die vorige ungarische Regierung von unserer Fraktion kritisiert worden für das Vorgehen zum Beispiel bei Demonstrationen. Es ist nicht so gewesen, dass wir da ohne Kritik gewesen sind, aber die Art von Beschreibungen, die hier heute stattfinden, die kann ich an dieser Stelle nicht so teilen. Aber dass hier kritische Debatten stattgefunden haben und dass auch die Vorgängerregierung nicht ohne Fehl und Tadel gewesen ist, dass auch bestimmte Vorgehensweisen in dieser Zeit zu dem geführt haben, was wir heute diskutieren, das würde in meiner Fraktion hier niemand bestreiten.
No, please. No, wait. Because some people are very curious to speak. I would like to take Tatjana, and then please, Agnes, you answer.
Thank you, Helga, but just maybe we can switch to this normal system. We collect several questions, and then it's easy, and it's some economy of time just to answer some couple of questions. Maybe they're similar, not to convert our meeting into inter-Hungarian debate, yes? And I just want to switch to using the opportunities that we have an outstanding philosopher having an experience of living in Eastern Europe and also in the West. Some general conclusions I would like to hear from you. And just deriving from your statements, first, I am also coming from Eastern Europe. I am from Latvia. And in this group, in Green Group, we have only 2 MEPs from new member states. So it would be very useful for politicians in our group just to have some more generalized approach on what is happening, because my position is that it's not one particular case. And it's not a case of government of Orban. Of course, I do agree that there were problems with social liberal governments, the same thing. And my question is whether there are some consistent patterns in how things are changing in so-called post-communist or post-authoritarian countries. You know the statement of Brzezinski that only ideology which can come instead of communism is nationalism. And don't we see just a proof of this? That's one question. The second question, yeah, you told that people in Hungary are relying on person or on a leader. They don't rely on themselves. It's a little bit strange for me because this is a manner of thinking in so-called traditional societies. Hungarians are Protestants, and it's a little bit controversial. What is your approach? Maybe it's just this post-totalitarian situation is overwhelming. This rely on yourself, not on a leader. Yeah, a little bit more general approach. I would like to hear from you as a philosopher. Thank you.
Herr Gahler, jetzt würde ich Sie gerne nehmen und dann machen wir weiter mit einer Antwort. Ja, I take you, but I have to put the things together.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich möchte vielleicht mit einem Punkt anfangen, wo ich übereinstimme. Sie haben am Anfang gesagt, es gibt nur eine Art von Demokratie. Sie nannten das dann Western Democracy. Wir sagen manchmal hier, dass es universelle Menschenrechte gibt, die für alle gelten. Und ich würde sagen, nicht nur für den Westen, sondern dass wir die grundsätzlich überall uns anschauen. Ich habe mir die ungarische Entwicklung eigentlich seit der Wende angeschaut und sie begleitet und habe natürlich über die Jahre immer wieder festgestellt, dass es eine doch vergleichsweise sehr unversöhnliche und harte Auseinandersetzung zwischen den beiden Lagern immer gegeben hat. Und es hat mir eigentlich von keiner Seite wirklich gefallen. Gleichwohl habe ich schon den Eindruck, dass wir auch in Ungarn wie in anderen mittelosteuropäischen Ländern festzustellen haben, dass die früheren Eliten, die sich in einer Art und Weise sowohl in der Verwaltung als auch in der Wirtschaft durch Privatisierung und auch in den Medien in einem Umfang auch festgesetzt haben, dass dann das Ergebnis ebenso ist, wie es bisher war. Und ich schon ein gewisses Verständnis dafür haben kann, dass man ein Mediengesetz versucht zu etablieren, dieses Wort Ausgewogenheit hat ja jetzt eine schlechte Konnotation und das ist ja auch raus aus dem Gesetz. Aber in unserem öffentlich-rechtlichen Rundfunk, den wir in Deutschland haben, ist entweder implizit oder explizit schon davon gesprochen, dass im Rahmen der Grundversorgung der Öffentlichkeit auch eine Ausgewogenheit in irgendeiner Form stattzufinden hat. Nein, es gibt ja auch keine. Guckt mal, das ist, es sind ja dann auch, was vorgesehen ist, ist ja auch, dass es nicht in Kraft tritt, sondern dass man sich gegen alles wehren kann. Also das ist ja nicht so, dass man da Objekt einer Entscheidung wäre, sondern man kann sich ja gegen alle Entscheidungen auch wehren. Ich glaube, dass aus Ihren Äußerungen ein Stück weit, und da bitte ich um Verzeihung, wenn das als Kritik empfunden wird, ein Stück weit auch intellektuelles Beleidigtsein herauskommt, dass die Ungarn es gewagt haben, jetzt so eine Regierung zu wählen. Also so wie Sie Ihre Mitbürger qualifiziert haben, die fragen nicht nach Rechten, sondern erwarten einen Gunstbeweis, they ask for a favor. Da würde ich als Nicht-Ungar mich vor die Ungarn stellen und sagen, die sind ein Stück weiter, die haben sich gegen autoritäre Herrschaft mehrfach gewehrt. Und was meine Frage eigentlich ist, glauben Sie wirklich, dass diejenigen, die heute an der Regierung sind, die vor 25 Jahren noch vor Gericht gestanden haben, wenn sie die freie Meinungsäußerung gewagt haben. Einige von denen, die heute im Parlament sind, die haben auch Schwierigkeiten gehabt mit den damaligen Behörden. Glauben Sie, dass die wirklich vom Ansatz her jetzt Zensur und das alles zurückdrehen wollen, nachdem sie doch selber die Opfer waren in dieser alten Zeit? Ich kann es mir eigentlich nicht vorstellen. Und von daher glaube ich auch, dass die Einschätzung unseres früheren Kollegen Paul Schmidt als Marionette und er kann nicht mal richtig schreiben und Ungarisch, das ist doch eigentlich unter Ihrem Niveau. Bitte, Sie brauchen diese Kritik doch nicht zu äußern in dieser Form, wenn man berechtigt einen Punkt an so einem Gesetz äußert. Und ein letzter Punkt, glauben Sie nicht, dass auch in Ungarn es so sein wird, dass es keine rückwirkenden Strafgesetze geben wird? Auch das war eine der Behauptungen. Ich glaube, auch das wird in Ungarn nicht der Fall sein. Danke.
Okay, now Agnes is going to answer, and then I take 3 other questions.
There are other questions as well. First, please interpret, lady. Félreértette, amit mondtam. I never said criminal. Sosem mondtam, hogy kriminális a kormány. Azt mondtam, I've said that it is not a conservative government because he speaks and refers to a revolution. I never mentioned any criminal activity here. And I never said that Orban is an anti-Semite. I said rather the opposite in one of my interviews in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. You say something, you attribute to me something which I never said. So this is always a problem. Maybe my narrative differs from your narrative, but please try to understand what the other says. And don't impute the other certain kind of words which he or she never ever uttered. That I don't particularly like. The next thing about the general problem. I think I could not speak in such a short time. I think you are right because there is no general background here. I gave, when I arrived to this place, I distributed a photograph. Maybe it is still here, this photograph. The photograph is from 1988. In one room together sit Gyurcsány and Orban, in very friendly talk with each other. It was in 1988 when everyone in Hungary believed and hoped that we will get to a free state, the free constitutional state, where people will act democratically and we listen to the opinion of the others. It was a terrible thing that we misused 20 years. The story is about misusing 20 years. And not only one party is responsible, many parties are responsible for misusing the 20 years. But here we are now, and we discuss the situation now. We do not discuss the situation 1990, because we cannot do that anymore. We cannot speak about Antal and the first Orban government or Mengyes or the first Gyurcsány government. It was done. It was a way. I don't particularly like in Hungary, and this is the last thing I want to say, that the long memory. When I talk to people, I say, do you remember what this man said 20 years ago? Do you remember what he did 15 years ago? I think please have short memory. The thing is what we are going to do now. Because we always think about what was done 15 years ago, we never get anywhere. And this country needs to get out from this impasse. And if you criticize me because of my sympathy to the left liberal coalition, I can tell you I was the only one who in the ATV spoke about the so famous Összödi beszéd in the same way that hogy elment tökéletesen ez, I cannot describe it in, I uttered my opinion then as well. But interestingly, no one criticized me for that. Now, the last question. Yeah. The last question. About, yes, I think that you can speak about different kinds of democracies, but I speak about liberal democracy because that is Western democracy. And when I criticize the acts of the government, now I criticize that does not live up to the requirements of a liberal democracy. I was brought up in a world when we learned that the Soviet Union is the real democracy as against formal democracy. It was enough for me. I don't want real democracy. I want simply formal democracy. The kind of democracy for which is very formal, which is bad government, of course, but there is a press which can put things right, and the press can control this government. And the many different kind of independent arms can control each other. And I repeat, a slow government. I want a Hungarian prime minister. If I tell you what I want a Hungarian prime minister no one adores and no one hates. That is my greatest wish.
Okay, Rebecca,
Ja, ich
and then the floor is
eine
yours.
ganz kurze Zwischenbemerkung machen und fühle mich dazu herausgefordert durch Herrn Gahler, einen Kollegen aus der EVP-Fraktion und auch einem deutschen Abgeordnetenkollegen, der Agnes unterstellt hat oder angedeutet hat, dass sein Eindruck ist, sie sei als Intellektuelle gekränkt von der Entwicklung. Ich glaube, man kann sowas sogar haben. Eine solche Kränkung kann man empfinden. Ich muss Ihnen jetzt aber mal sagen, Herr Gahler, ich fühle mich als deutsche Abgeordnete manchmal wirklich intellektuell gekränkt, wenn immer wieder Kollegen aus Deutschland in dieser Debatte über das ungarische Mediengesetz verweisen auf die deutsche Mediengesetzgebung und so tun, als könnte man sich darauf beziehen, wenn man über die ungarische Lage spricht. Und weil ich das nicht mehr ertrage, würde ich vorschlagen, dass wir mal so eine Art Fortbildungs- oder Austauschtreffen machen in diesem Parlament mit deutschen Abgeordneten, die sich von dieser Debatte betroffen fühlen und uns gegenseitig schlau machen über das, was in Deutschland Mediengesetzgebung ist, wie differenziert diese Mediengesetzgebung ist, wie viel Rechtsprechung es in Deutschland gegeben hat, um die gute Rechtsetzung, die wir in Deutschland haben, zu verteidigen. Weil ich glaube, dass schon eine Stunde Debatte über das deutsche Mediengesetz Ihnen nicht mehr erlauben würde, sich hinter die Mediengesetzgebung in Ungarn zu stellen.
Please.
Vielen Dank, Frau Tübel. Kann ich Folgendes auf Deutsch? But my opinion is a little bit difficult. That's why I speak in Hungarian. Köszönöm a szót. Bagó Zoltán vagyok, magyar néppárti képviselő, és nagyon-nagyon szomorúan ültem végig ezt az előadást. Tekintettel arra, hogy jogászként itt folyamatosan jegyzeteltem, és tételesen vissza tudnék hivatkozni azokra az elhangzott mondatokra, amelyek csúsztatások, és nem állják ki a valóság próbáját. Sajnos ez részben lehet, hogy annak köszönhető, hogy a professzorasszony 1977 óta nem él rendszeresen Magyarországon, tehát több mint 34 éve nem életvitelszerűen van Magyarországon, hanem hazajár, és lehet, hogy ezért nem ismeri a magyarországi viszonyokat. De ezt nem tételezem fel. Valószínűleg inkább arról van szó, hogy egy másfajta értékrendet képvisel, egy olyan értékrendet, amelynek létjogosultsága van természetesen a világon, de ebből egyrészt mostanra a magyar társadalom többsége már nem kér, másrészt azóta nagyon-nagyon sok idő telt el. Hiába ingatják a fejüket, mert demokratikus választások alapján jött ki az az eredmény, amely Magyarországon elutasította azt a liberális gondolatrendszert, aminek az egyik alaptétele, illetve aminek a hallgatói vagyunk itt ma, és ezért tartom ezt a vitát álságosnak, hiszen ebben az egy órában nem tudunk olyan elméleti problémákat feloldani, amelyek gondolkodásmódok közötti különbséget takarnak. Ugye tételesen mik is hangzottak el, ugye azt mondta a professzor asszony, akinek én nagy tisztelője vagyok, hiszen az egyetemen olvastuk a munkáit, hogy a civil társadalom érdekeit a kormány nem veszi figyelembe. Ez ugye azért nehéz mondat, mert, bocsánat, szó szerint jegyzeteltem, a kormány nem veszi figyelembe a civil társadalom érdekeit, ez a mondat hangzott el. Bocsánat, szó szerint jegyzeteltem. Ön mondta, professzorasszony. Ön mondta,
Vielleicht haben Sie sich geirrt.
Köszönöm szépen, hogy ennyire bízik bennem Cohn-Bendit úr, ő már többször bizonyította azt, hogy a saját jegyzeteimből, professzorasszony. Igen. Vissza tudjuk hallgatni. Nem vagyok államügyész, köszönöm szépen, de nincs értelme akkor a vitának, hogyha az elhangzott mondatokat is kétségbe vonjuk, úgyhogy akkor megpróbálok gyorsítani. Az, hogy a kampány az előző kormányok ellen szól ma Magyarországon, ez egyszerűen nem igaz, a választások megtörténtek. Való igaz, hogy az előző kormányok idején történtek olyan dolgok, amiket most a mostani államigazgatás kivizsgál. Az visszataszító azt mondani a köztársasági elnökre, hogy a mostani köztársasági elnök magyarul sem tud. Ez több mint durva, tekintettel arra, hogy ha csak itt a meghallgatáson megnézzük a hozzászólásokat, 1 másodperc, akkor ez nem igaz. Az, hogy a liberális demokrácia, a nyugati demokrácia, ez megint nem igaz. Nagyon sok politikai rendszer van, ezek közül az egyik a liberális demokrácia. Arra hivatkozni, hogy kultúrkampf van Magyarországon, és az értelmiségi elitek harcolnak egymással, ez megint egy nézőponti kérdés. Ön szerint az önök által képviselt értékrend az értelmiségi elit, nagyon sokan vannak Magyarországon, akik szerint nem. Be fogom fejezni, Trüppel asszony, már az előttem szólók lényegesen több időt kaptak, de azt még szeretném aláhúzni, hogy akkor médiatörvényről beszélni...
Please, colleague, please now come to an end, because I would really like to give some other colleagues the possibility to talk, please.
I understand, okay. 3 mondatot szeretnék mondani. A mai nappal az MSZP és az SZDSZ a magyar parlamentben nem járult hozzá ahhoz, hogy sürgősséggel tárgyalják a médiatörvénynek az ügyét. Ez egy kérdés, kíváncsi vagyok az ön véleményére ezzel kapcsolatban. A második kérdésem, miért hivatkozik a Kádár korszakra és arra a kontinuitásra, amiről beszélt akkor, amikor Magyarországon 8 évig az apró klán és az ő leszármazottaik voltak az államigazgatás csúcsán. És a harmadik, azt mondani, befejeztem, hogy senkit nem lőttek le, ezek tények és fikciók, szó szerint ezt mondta, ez egyszerűen hazugság. Emlékszünk a vérzőfejű emberekre, emlékszünk arra az emberre, akinek kilőtték a szemét, és sorolhatnám. Köszönöm szépen.
Now please, Rui Tavares. No, Agnes, wait, we collect some questions and then you can answer. Please, Rui.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank the Greens for bringing Agnes Heller to the European Parliament, and I want to make some comments on the state of play here in the European institutions as to the Hungarian media law. I think that at this moment we have fallen into a trap. The European Commission has been discussing details and minor details in this law. First of all, they have accepted to discuss this law as a matter of media competition and media market with the Commissioner Neelie Kroes, and not as a question of fundamental rights with the Commissioner Viviane Reding. This was the first mistake. Second, there was an exchange of letters between Commissioner Kroes and Minister Navracsics from the Hungarian government, who has only came about to Minister Navracsics restating his major assumption. In the end, the Commission has gained some minor concessions, but they have accepted to discuss under the framework of that major assumption, and that assumption means that government can and shall enforce balance and pluralism. The Commission has even accepted one concession that I think is shameful for all Europeans. They have accepted that the effects of the law shall only bear upon locally based media. So foreign-based media channels owned by other European entrepreneurs shall not be subject of this law, which goes completely against what Europe since 1989 means, which is we will not abandon other European countries to repression or to censorship or self-censorship. So we are discussing details. We have completely accepted this major assumption, which is completely wrong, because we cannot enforce balance. We can only strive at balance in a balanced way. We can only strive at pluralism in a way that it is as itself plural. And now, where are we now? We have the resolution in next plenary in Strasbourg. It's a high-risk moment there. And because the Parliament has not, I'm afraid to say this, I'm sorry to say this, we have not made our work. We have copied the Commission in the kind of relation that the Commission has with the society. Commission chooses as its interlocutor the Hungarian government. Hungarian government says everything is okay, we accept. The Parliament has done exactly the same thing. We now have Agnes Heller in a group meeting, which is a great thing, but as an emanation of civil society, we have not heard from journalist associations, from the Fundamental Rights Agency, etc., etc. So I urge, for instance, at the Conference of Presidents, for the Conference of Presidents to ask the Culture Committee and the Libe Committee to have a hearing on this Hungarian media law. We shall not limit ourselves to having governments as our interlocutors. Okay, thank you very much.
Now I would like to ask Pierre, do you want to have the floor? Pierre? Did you ask for the floor? No. Then Jean-Paul, please.
Oui, je voudrais dire à Agnès Heller que les valeurs auxquelles elle se réfère pour critiquer la situation en Hongrie sont les valeurs que les députés verts européens partagent et qu'elle est donc la bienvenue parmi nous. Et par ailleurs, vous nous décrivez donc un certain nombre de faits extrêmement inquiétants, en particulier la loi contre la liberté de la presse, appelons-la par son nom, qui vont dans le sens d'une annulation des contre-pouvoirs en Hongrie. Alors j'aimerais vous poser la question suivante. Est-ce que, selon vous, selon votre analyse, en prenant un petit peu de recul, est-ce qu'il s'agit là seulement d'une poussée de fièvre autoritaire des nouvelles autorités de M. Orban, ou bien plus profondément d'une vague systématique d'un système qui est en train de se mettre en place en Hongrie et peut-être dans d'autres pays européens, et qu'il y a là péril en la demeure à partir de ces premiers signaux. Quelle est votre analyse là-dessus? Est-ce qu'il faut s'inquiéter profondément de ces prémices, de cette première fièvre, ou bien est-ce qu'on se raconte des histoires? Et de ce point de vue-là, est-ce que de votre point de vue, de votre position en Hongrie, la réaction de l'Union européenne, du Parlement européen, de la Commission, est suffisante pour s'opposer et pour tirer le signal d'alarme par rapport à cette tendance-là extrêmement inquiétante?
Merci Jean-Paul. Gerald, ganz kurz bitte, und dann hat Agnes die Gelegenheit zu antworten.
Ja, ich wollte nur kurz etwas zum Ausdruck bringen, was mir ein bisschen Sorgen macht. Und das betrifft die Art und Weise und die Struktur unserer Debatte hier. Ich will an etwas anderes erinnern, wo die meisten, die jetzt hier im Raum sind, nicht dabei waren. Wir haben ja nicht nur diese dramatische Situation in Ungarn, wir haben dramatische Einschränkungen der Medienfreiheit in Rumänien, wir haben eine wirklich bedrückende Mediensituation in Italien. Wir haben die Situation, dass die Freiheit der Medien in mehr und mehr Ländern unter Druck gerät. Wir haben im Petitionsausschuss zur Frage der Situation der Medien in Rumänien eine Anhörung gemacht. Was ist passiert? Die geschätzte Fraktion der EPP hat die Abgeordneten, die regelmäßig diesen Ausschuss besuchen und dort Mitglied sind, haben sich auf die Zuschauerränge zurückgezogen. Die Tür ging auf und es kamen 8 rumänische Abgeordnete, die dann die dort Berichtenden unter Feuer genommen haben mit ähnlichen Argumenten, wie ich es jetzt hier heute gehört habe. Ich habe ja kaum Argumente gehört. Ich habe gehört, Frau Heller ist öfters im Ausland, als sei das irgendwie ehrenrührig. Ich habe gehört, auch andere Regierungen haben Fehler gemacht, als täte das irgendwas ändern an der Situation jetzt und so weiter. Mich besorgt. Ich freue mich, dass wir als grüne Fraktion so gastfreundlich sind. Ich freue mich, dass so viele die Gastfreundschaft annehmen. Ich würde mir wünschen, dass das Annehmen der Gastfreundschaft darein mündet, dass man sich einlässt auf einen ehrlichen Diskurs des Europäischen Parlaments über die hier zur Debatte stehenden Fragen und dass wir nicht in nationale Abwehrschlachten oder Anwürfe hier ausbrechen. Das besorgt mich und ich glaube, dass wir sehr viel Grund haben, darüber nachzudenken, was unsere jeweilige Aufgabe ist als ein Abgeordneter im Europäischen Parlament, wenn es darum geht, Medienfreiheit, Bürgerrechte, Menschenrechte, Demokratie in Europa zu verteidigen und weiterzuentwickeln.
Okay, Agnes, now the floor is yours and you have the possibility to answer the questions, please.
I think that I agree with several contributions to the discussion. I do not want to answer to this, I agree. But you see, you got now an example of the way the Fidesz normally discusses matters. This gentleman attributed to me a sentence, 100% sure that I said it. He quoted a sentence I never said. because he doesn't understand English. And that's why he believed that I said something which I haven't said. Yeah, absolutely not. Then there are other examples. Someone speaks about the Apro clan. You know what the Apro clan is? It is the story that the Prime Minister Gyurcsány has married the granddaughter of Apro. That is now called Apro clan. I can tell you, a very respected Fidesz member, whom I really respect, his father was an informer of the secret police. He informed on me, yeah? So what kind of conclusion I draw from this to his son? Nothing. What does it mean, Apro clan? What kind? I would shame myself in his place to utter this kind of word. Who is responsible, father and grandfather and the wife's grandfather, and speaking about a clan? That's like Agnes Heller and his gang, the same kind of argument. I oppose this kind of argument. I think no one with normal mind would do that. And as far as my criticism of the president of Hungary is concerned, maybe it was too strong, but he uttered two kind of writings which were full of mistakes, Hungarian mistakes, grammatical mistakes and other kind of mistakes, and even the rectification of those also had 3 mistakes. It does not mean that he does not speak Hungarian, but the person who surround him, who write his papers for him, they are very bad at Hungarian grammar, and that's proven. That I don't need to prove it because it's on paper. So I don't think I need to answer others. And as far, again, to the media law concern, I don't speak about the thing whether the law is itself right or wrong. I think it's utterly wrong because the government should not control the media should control the government. However, that the thing that every member in an authority comes from the same party, comes from the governing party, and the head of the authority comes also from the governing party, this is an anomaly, an absolute anomaly. Everyone would see, it is crystal clear, it's an anomaly, irrespective of the content of the whole law, which in my mind is also wrong, but even irrespective of the content, it's an anomaly. No media law can be controlled by one single party, by the governing party, and one person who is also belonging to the governing party. This is an anomaly, and I believe this is an anomaly in itself.
Okay, thank you very much, Agnes. We think we were very glad that you were ready to come to us to have this open debate, and I would like to finish with 2 political statements. For me, it was very important what Gerald Häfner and Rui Tavares said, that we as the Parliament should take ourselves serious. We should not go only into the national fights, but we should respect our European responsibilities and European accountability. It's about the Charter of Fundamental Rights. It's really about freedom of press. It's not only the problem of Hungary, but it's a problem of Hungary, but it's a problem of Romania, of Slovenian laws. It's a problem in Italy. And therefore, I think what we in the Parliament have to address is the much broader question of the future of freedom of press in the European Union. Because if we don't take ourselves serious on this, we cannot criticize anymore Iran, China, or other authoritarian regimes. And therefore, I think it's absolutely important that we come back to this and have a very clear statement what we, as the Parliament, towards the Commission and towards the Council want to achieve. And therefore, I think there are really big questions at stake. I hope it was at least a contribution to what is endangered all over the European Union. Thank you for coming, and we will continue on this. Thank you.